Welcome to Remotely Interested, the podcast where we talk remote working, work life in general, and top tips to successfully work from anywhere. Today we'll hear from LAETITIA Hornsberger, a product manager working in the software as a service space. LAETITIA has experience working in Switzerland, Denmark and England. Currently based in London, she continues to collaborate with colleagues from around the world. LAETITIA, welcome to the Remotely Interested podcast.
Thanks, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all good, thank you. How are you?
Good, yeah, not too bad, thank you. Nice to see you. And thanks for agreeing to be a guest on the podcast today. This is really great. I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, me too.
We worked together a little bit more than 2 years ago. So for anybody that's listening that doesn't know you and doesn't know anything about your career, do you want to begin by talking a bit about the work that you do and also how remote working and hybrid working has been a feature in the way that you work?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a product manager. I work in tech companies basically and help with whatever should happen to the product they're selling. So I started doing this a few years ago, and actually I started working remotely right away. I was hired for my first PM job during COVID, and or kind of like when it was starting, and it was sort of like these remote interviews, starting something remotely, not ever meeting your colleagues, and so on, which was quite interesting. I was a little bit, I don't know, I think in the moment you just go with whatever is offered to you and you take that and you move on. But yeah, so that was quite nice. Also because I think it just gave me a lot of flexibility at the time, especially starting a new career, starting a new job. Like sometimes you want to be able to research things, you want to be able to take a breath and try to understand what's happening. So that was really nice in these first times.
Moving into a remote role, there were advantages then to being remote as a product manager. Was it easy to make the transition?
I think it depends. So most of the time that I worked as a product manager, actually the whole time, my development team or teams were always either completely remote or partially remote. So I haven't really been lucky enough to just always have developers sitting by my side to whom I could just like go and chat to. So I think that was definitely something that was a bit challenging and that I would have loved to have at first when starting with new people, also because it's sometimes a bit difficult to build trust and like some kind of human relationship on top of just working together, especially around things like, I don't know, giving the feeling that this is a safe space, you can be honest, you can raise any risks, you can raise any doubts, it's not too late to raise a problem. So these kinds of like people things were a little bit harder to establish remotely. But I think it depends a lot on the team. And if everyone is remote, it's easier than having some kind of mix, because then you fall into a strange, oh, we're in this meeting room together, we're coming in joking and having a coffee, and then this other person is a little bit excluded or feels like they're not part of the same team. So I think it's about finding the right balance between these things.
That's really interesting then. So in terms of being able to bond as a team, everybody needs to almost have the same status, whether they're working remotely, like you said, or hybrid, but at least in the office at the same times. Yeah, I can imagine that would be difficult trying to collaborate closely on a product if not everybody feels like it's a safe space, like you said earlier, or feels part of the group.
Yeah, I think you can do different things for that as well. I mean, there's the whole like how we work together as people. I think in terms of just making projects happen and being productive, it's never really been a problem for me to be remote. If you have people who can communicate with you and like who can write a lot, answer a lot as well, who can have calls sometimes a bit spontaneously during the day, or like be very good at communicating any problems they have or anything like that, maybe going into a lot of details, but like taking lots of screenshots, using Loom to record videos to show what's happening, that kind of thing. I think it's more about, can we write and communicate and, use different media to let each other know what's happening. It's also really important for me to, it sounds a bit stupid, but to use emojis. I think that's such an important part of a culture. And if you just keep writing kind of like dryly, it's really hard to understand like what's going on, how, what's the vibe really between us. So that's definitely something. One thing that I find quite important too is having the camera on. I know some people think it's really annoying to have a rule where you always have to turn your camera on. But I think if you do it because you think it's nice, I mean, I like speaking to you and seeing your face. I'm hoping others feel the same. So I think if we all kind of enjoy seeing each other, it really changes a lot, rather than when you have these horrible calls where you're the only one with your face shown and nobody else is there. That's really
Absolutely.
awkward. Yeah.
It's such a vulnerable position, isn't it? You're showing your face to the world, as it were, and they're not doing their side of the bargain. Yeah, it's really tough. I agree with you. Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, about emojis, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because it seems like emojis are just for kind of social interactions, just for fun, almost childish. But no, I completely agree that at work, it's an opportunity to convey the tone of your message, which could potentially come across in a different way if you didn't just push the receiver in the right direction in terms of what you mean.
Also across different cultures, I think having worked in Scandinavia where things are maybe a bit more like, this is how it's going to be, I'm going to be direct and not, I don't know, I wouldn't say too polite, but more like not too sugarcoating what I want to tell you. Yeah, I also work with like British teams, German teams at the moment. A lot of my colleagues are Turkish, so I think it's quite interesting to have a mix of cultures and to understand how each communicates and maybe not get too offended, or at least kind of see where someone comes from when you do get offended by how they're talking to you.
Yeah, so the idea that emojis can enable us to cross cultures, yeah, really good point. Even if we don't have a shared mother tongue. Yeah, I think that's really important. So really good tips then to make sure that a team remain united and can really gel when working on a project. So now that you've had the experience of both working in person 100% of the time and working remotely or hybrid, what would you say are the positive aspects of being able to work from home or from anywhere?
I think, I mean, it depends a lot on your personality and kind of like how you organize your life. I don't have children, so I don't really have to work my schedule around having a family or anything like that. But I think it's nice in the sense that you can have a bit more flexibility. You can be, I mean, it depends on the company, of course, but you can be different places and do your job from there. Also, you can just honestly sometimes be home, have the focus time, have no one coming up and asking you questions, maybe silence your Slack notifications or something, and really crack on with the work. So I think that's a big part for me, like having some kind of sheltered time. But I mean, if you commute, it's a huge difference too, not having to commute. I don't have that problem too much right now, but it has been a thing in the past where I really appreciated spending a day not being in the tube, basically. And in general, you just get more flexibility with your life. Like if you, I have it now, I'm in London the whole time. So when I go to the office, I'm in London. When I'm home, I'm in London too. But I really appreciate being able to do things like work out after work, maybe see a friend, have lunch with my husband, do laundry, maybe that kind of things. Just the quick like daily things. And we also get, for some reason that I don't really understand, we get a million contractors coming all the time to do different things on the flat, which isn't our flat. So that's a bit of a question mark. But they're coming in all the time and they always have to have someone home to be here. So it's definitely been an advantage for that too.
Of course, of being able to take care of certain domestic issues while still working. Yeah, no, it's true. even simple things like Amazon deliveries as well. I recently got back from a trip and I made loads of purchases that I needed to do because I knew the next couple of weeks I'm going to be at home working, not too many interruptions. So yeah, I can make the most of being here to receive the parcels. Although, yeah, sometimes they still, end up coming super late, and that's another story. Excellent. So those are the positive things about working remotely. What would you say are some of the challenges, the negative aspects of working from anywhere and not working in person?
I mean, definitely a huge one is the lack of social interactions with your colleagues. Again, it depends on the person, really. I'm quite sociable, so I think I would get really bored if I couldn't meet anyone. I really value the small, I don't know, like jokes. Maybe it's a bit like small talky, but the small jokes that you make with your colleagues, or like going and getting a coffee somewhere, sitting down together for lunch, or just, turning around and complaining about your day kind of interactions. I think that's really important. And I really made some good friends since I started working in London. So I really appreciate that a lot. So I would definitely miss this if I was working fully remotely. I think also sometimes you can fall into the trap of thinking like, yes, sure, I can be anywhere. So it's also very dependent on the person. But things like if you don't have your monitor and then suddenly you get a massive Excel task, or like something where you need to review huge designs, and Figma isn't working with your laptop that well, and these kind of things, like the setup, also depending on where you work. I mean, the last time we went to Denmark with my husband, we didn't realize the Airbnb had just one big room. So then both of us working remotely for 10 days in a single room where we both have meetings the entire day was very challenging.
That is
Um,
hard, yeah.
this kind of things. And I really like working remotely as well. So we have policy at my current work where you can work 30 days abroad every year, which is great. And I use many days each year, but sometimes I also fall into, oh, I can just go there and work. But then it's a bit stressful because everything you would like to do during a holiday or like a day off or something, you still do on these days, and then it gets a lot, like getting all of your work done plus socializing every single day, seeing your friends from other countries, that kind of things. It can be a bit overwhelming sometimes as well.
It's true. If you've traveled and you've planned to work, it's not technically a holiday anymore. And I agree with you that if you're trying to do both to the extreme, you'll end up more stressed than if you'd simply stayed at home and worked, or simply said I'm not working and taken the holiday. Yeah, finding that separation between work and life and holidays can be really tricky. And it's a
Mhm.
really fair point that the setup is so important. So there's a big difference between just having your laptop in a cafe somewhere, or even on the beach, and having a proper setup with a large screen. It shouldn't be taken for granted, and it's important to maintain a certain quality of work, because it's
Yeah,
possible
exactly.
technically to work everywhere, but what is the quality of that work? What are you actually able to achieve with the material that you have with you, the laptop or other tools? Yeah.
I mean, some of my colleagues travel with monitors, with a mouse, with a keyboard, and so on, but then it also gets quite a lot, right? You need to find a balance, I
Yeah,
guess.
I guess that's a way around it, but yeah, it certainly increases the luggage. So yeah, I
Mhm.
guess you have to factor that in. So obviously, you mentioned earlier as well the fact that you've worked with people from different countries, different cultures, etc. But irrespective of that, what would you say makes somebody easy to work with if you're collaborating on a project remotely?
I would say if they are structured, I mean, that would be for anything, not really just remotely or not, but if they're structured and if we can make a plan together and keep updating the plan. Working with engineering teams, we always use these boards, and like in Jira, for example, you have quite structured way of taking a task from, before you start working on it until it's completed. In this kind of cases, it's very important for me to be able to be someone that goes through every step and follows through and raises any problems and makes sure everyone is up to date on what is happening. So that's kind of for the structured side. In terms of communication, I was saying before, I think it's quite key to be able to just communicate a lot, maybe over communicate. It's fine. It's never a problem as long as you don't under communicate. But write documents, draw user flows, send a vocal maybe. You can record yourself showing something on your screen, anything like that really helps. And then in the way you write, sometimes it's literally things like using commas, using punctuation in general, using emojis, using paragraphs, that kind of things. But then it also comes down to how you like to be communicated with. You can always kind of make a plan with a colleague on, we need this kind of output, so let's make sure we can sync on it in these different ways. We have the right meetings in place, we have the right maybe project management tool or something like that, and then we keep updating each other. We're open, we're friendly, there's no tension, that kind of things. I think it can easily get more dramatic in your head if you don't see the person face to face and something feels a bit off, rather than if you were in the same office and you could just go say hi in between two meetings or something.
I think that's a really key point about making sure that communication is structured. Yeah, I agree. Because it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, well, because we're working remotely, we can communicate a lot at any time. But if it's not structured and if it's not developed, then how can you progress? Excellent.
Exactly. And maybe sometimes what we've done with the teams I've worked with was remote socials. So you can organize like I don't know, people love to play games. So you can play games of, I can't remember what it's called when you draw something and people guess what it is. That kind of
Like
thing.
Pictionary.
Pictionary, exactly. Or something called Among Us is very popular with my colleagues right now. You are a little character walking around on a map, and some of the characters kill the others, and you have to find out who's the killer, kind of thing. So it's just nice to, from time to time, have something else to do than just work. And I think sometimes it's easier if you have a plan and some activity rather than just awkwardly sitting in a call waiting for someone to say something, and then your microphone is cut because someone said something before, and it's a bit awkward because you can't have different conversations at the same time. So organizing socials is quite important too.
Yeah, that's nice. And I guess being able to meet together socially online maybe helps for the interaction online in general to be more relaxed, and yeah, people are more used to it. But what's the name again of that game where people are killing each other?
Among Us? I
Among
think
Us.
it's Among Us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could be risky though if people are working out their aggression against certain colleagues and
It's not that violent. You can't really
okay.
pick also.
As long as you don't pick anybody too
It's not gone
specifically.
wrong yet.
It's not gone wrong yet. Okay. There's not been any relationships broken because of it. Okay, that's good.
No, rather the opposite.
Oh, good. Oh, well, that's the point, isn't it? That's the plan. Okay. Well, as you know, Letitia, this is the Remotely Interested podcast about remote working, work life in general, and top tips to successfully work from anywhere. So we've already covered quite a few points under these categories, so thanks very much. We're now going to reach for the Mosaic Gold plate for the surprise question. So here we are, very old-fashioned.
Oh,
Yeah, here we
wow.
go. Random questions. I promise. Yeah, you can see. So I'm going to
Great.
pick a random question.
I trust you.
And we'll see what it says. Oh, I like this one. Okay. So, have you ever experienced an apparent work-related failure that actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's coming down really to how you interpret your life. On good days, maybe you can see things this way. Maybe on bad days, you would be like, oh, everything went wrong since that thing happened. But without naming too many names, I think when the place where we used to work together um, stopped really working out, it was a huge shock. I was really sad. I didn't imagine that we would, stop that quickly and that abruptly. But I think it was quite a nice push at the same time to go and discover something else and yeah, try being a product manager in yet another place after that. So yeah, I think that was quite a learning. Like you can do very well, you can have a good time, you can create great products and work very intensively, but it's also okay that maybe at some point you move on and try something else. And yeah, I'm just really happy to have learned a lot. And also from that experience, because you can lose a job. It's okay. You'll find another one probably. Life is quite long.
It's totally about perspective, isn't it? Yeah, I really agree. And seeing a gap in work as an opportunity to push yourself towards something else. And when you look back, you can see, yeah, that was actually a really important turning point that led me somewhere good. I share your opinion as well about that particular work experience. So,
Nice.
excellent. Okay, well, thanks, Letitia. It's been a really good chat. Really happy to get your perspective. So, as we've already mentioned, you are a product manager in the SaaS space. Loads of experience. I'm sure many of our listeners would be really happy to connect with you and learn more about the industry. So if they want to get in touch with you with a view to even perhaps collaborating on a project, where can they find you?
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, it's been a really nice chat. So I think honestly, the easiest is always just LinkedIn.
Well, I will share your LinkedIn profile as part of the notes of the podcast, and then people can get in touch. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time out. It's been really great.
Yeah,
Take care and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Yet again, we saw that effective communication is key and the importance of making good use of the software available to assist with remote work, as well as the benefits of using emojis, particularly in an international team. We saw that it's critical to be reasonable when travelling and that making sure we have an appropriate setup and the right equipment is essential if we want to maintain a high level of work. And we saw that it's crucial to make the effort to build social connections with our remote colleagues throughout the working day and also during organised remote social meetups. So, if you're even remotely interested in remote working, I'll see you next time.